Hello,
Hello,
everyone.
joining in. Hello.
Kristen, you look really warm.
I'm warm than I have lots of layers on. My house is cold. How is everyone?
Very good.
You're busy?
Are you trying to save on heating costs as well? Heating costs have spiked tremendously.
Yeah, well, the heat's not on that much, yeah. I got a little heater going too over here.
Yeah, because my little house here, heating this past month was $400 just on heating bills alone. So it's gone up.
That is hefty.
80% up.
Hefty price.
And I think with all the noise that's happening around Ukraine, we'll see more of it for a little while. So.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Howdy.
Thanks for coming. We'll get started in just a couple minutes here.
Sounds good. I'm trying to find my other thing.
While we are waiting, I had a question for Piers. Was it you who scheduled yesterday's meeting? Because I missed that somehow.
Yesterday's meeting was just not really a part of the program. It was something that we could just all listen in on to if we wanted to. So it wasn't a requirement that you didn't miss much.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I somehow missed that email. I had exams going on. And then I was like, I wish I could have attended that. Has that meeting been recorded?
The meeting wasn't recorded, but we got a little presentation from the presenter. So I can forward that presentation to you if you want some of the information from it.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Of course.
Hello, good evening. Sorry if I didn't respond.
Just give it a couple more minutes here. I think Amelia was going to join us, maybe a few other folks too.
Matt, your outfit looks like a postal worker. It reminds me of that anyways.
I'm rocking all the branded gear. I got on my food group jacket and Dangerous Man hat. I'm just rocking all the brands.
Yeah.
What is the Dangerous Man brand about?
It's a brew pub in Northeast Minneapolis.
Oh, okay. Like that sounds so cool.
The story they've been open for years, but the story they shared when they opened was that one of the co-founders was a guy with a big bushy beard, and they had friends with young kids. And one of the daughters, who was probably like 5 or 6 at the time, saw him for a while and hadn't seen him for a while, and he had this huge beard. And she was like, "Oh my God, mommy, look, a dangerous man!" And he was like, "That's the name of the brewery."
Oh my God.
All right, well, we'll let people trickle in as they're able to. I'm going to share my screen here and open up the CSA program agreement, which is a brand new document we created for CSA this season. So I wanted to make sure we had some time to check in and just verbally go through it a little bit too, besides shooting it out over email, especially since it's a newer thing, and highlight a few new changes to the CSA program, the way that we're going to operate this coming season, just based on some feedback from returning farmers and from staff the past couple of years about how everything operated. So really highlighting those few bullet points, but just talking through it with new folks too, new people who are in their first year at the farm. And then I'll leave some time open at the end for questions if anybody has any, and we can just kind of go from there. So give me 1 second here. I'll share my screen with you. All right. So I am recording, just so everyone's aware, so that we can upload this to our YouTube channel and share it with anybody who wasn't able to be here tonight because of other commitments. But yeah, so here's the lovely new CSA farmer participation agreement. So the idea behind this was, in the past, we as Big River Farms didn't have any sort of documentation for how our CSA operated or what some of the expectations and requirements were for farmers who participated, or anything that really laid out like what our shared resources were and like the collective management of some of those resources. So that was the idea behind creating this CSA participation agreement, was just to like visually and verbally lay out some of that information and provide it to everybody, both staff and farmers up front, so everyone's kind of on the same page at the beginning of the season. Another part of the reason why this sorry, I'm getting some feedback. I can say another reason why this is a new thing is because we heard feedback from farmers who participated in the CSA in the past with contracts selling produce, but there was a disconnect that existed between farmers who grew and harvested and sold things, and then us as staff who kind of managed the back end as far as administration and program logistics. So we're trying to like bridge that gap a little bit more this season too, and create more educational opportunities and opportunities to collaborate and connect between staff and farmers during CSA season 2. So some of the ways that might show up are in like participating as a farmer in weekly field walks with May and myself to kind of gauge what might be available to harvest the following week to purchase for CSA, and learning more about what that process looks like and how, you know, May is a wealth of information, so it's great to learn from her and get some of her wisdom and knowledge on just like how you look at specific crops that are out in the field and gauge like how many might be ready to harvest for the following week. So that's one big piece that we want to focus more on from an educational standpoint, providing that opportunity. The other thing that's new, which I'll go over a little bit in more detail as we go through this document, is just providing more opportunities to do like some of the packing and learning about that process, how that works. And then some like I mentioned before, just collective management and maintenance of shared resources. For CSA, it's mainly harvest totes and CSA totes, but we'll get into that a little bit more too. One thing that's not in this document, which is new this season, I know I've talked about this with a few of you individually, is that a big shift we made was for the first time enabling first-year farmers who are new to Big River Farms to participate in CSA contracts, because that hadn't been true in the past. Before, it had just been open, it had just been a market opportunity that was open to farmers in our education program who had land at Big River, who were in their second, third, fourth year, and had that first year kind of under their belts, had some of that hands-on learning experience in the field. But we're really trying to make it more of an inclusive program and to provide that market opportunity like right off the bat for people who are in their first year too. So that's one of the big shifts this year, is trying to incorporate and encourage first year farmers to have some of those CSA contracts with us too. Well, zoomed way in. This document, the CSA Farmer Participation Agreement, kind of follows a very similar format to how the main farmer education program agreement is laid out that you all have signed and turned in with your $50 deposit for participating this year. So just to give you a sense of like where this came from, it kind of is, you can think of it as like a supplemental document to that that's just specific to how we operate our collective aggregated CSA program. So I'll just go through it. I won't read through everything in total depth. If you want to, feel free to do so afterwards and let me know. You know, we can always follow up one-on-one if you have additional questions or concerns or things that you want to learn more about. I'm happy to chat on the phone or email or whatever works best for you. So feel free to reach out after the class if you have more questions about any of this. But yeah, we'll just start off with the training and education section. So if you're a returning farmer, you probably already participated in the CSA crop bidding meeting, which took place last December. And priority is typically given to returning farmers or farmers who are at least in their second year of farming at Big River Farms, especially as they're kind of evolving their business plans and markets and strategies, crop planning for the upcoming season. But like I said, this is the first year that we're opening up CSA contracts to first year farmers too. So if you're a first year farmer, if you just joined Big River Farms and started coming to classes this past January, you can ignore this first bullet point because this was created a few months ago. But being here in attendance tonight and going to the virtual farmer goals discussions with either me and Becca or me and Emilio can kind of substitute for this first bullet point in the training and education section. Basically, we just want to make sure that we're having open communication and dialogue and working together to figure out what crops you want to grow for CSA and what your preferences are, what makes the most sense with our kind of master list of crops that have been bid on for CSA contracts. The second bullet point on here is just talking about attendance at, you know, events like this, training, CSA trainings, classes, workshops. We had that CSA panel discussion last weekend. So if you weren't able to attend that, that's up on our YouTube channel too. You can watch that video to learn more about CSA and some other farmers who have been with Big River for a while who participated and shared information about how they started their own CSA, their own independent CSA programs. Third and fourth bullet points kind of go back to what I mentioned at the beginning, just as far as some new expectations as a farmer participating in CSA contracts and some of those expectations throughout the season. So the first one there is participating in at least 2 days of CSA packing. Our typical CSA packing happens each week on Wednesday mornings from 6 to 8:30 a.m. You wouldn't need to be there until 6:30. That first half hour is really just us setting up the packing line. But if you're available and you're interested in learning about that too, you can definitely come for that. Our CSA season runs from Wednesday, June 15th through Wednesday, October 12th. So we'll be creating and sending out calendars that you can use to schedule and kind of pick and choose what makes the most sense for your schedule throughout the year, and just signing up for at least 2 of those time slots as you're able throughout the season. The second one on there is similar, but focused on those field walks that I mentioned. So signing up and participating in at least 2 weekly field walks with May and myself. And those typically happen on Tuesday mornings from 10 to noon, but there's definitely some flexibility there. So if that time slot doesn't work perfectly with your weekly schedule, let May and I know, and we can figure out a time that does work well. We do want those to happen every Tuesday, just to kind of fit the schedule of how the whole process occurs, from field walk to harvest estimate to inventory to emailing our customers, our members, to creating purchase orders for you as a farmer. So there is some flexibility on the time those are done, but they still need to happen on Tuesdays during the day. So again, we'll create a calendar, a sign-up calendar, and send that out to you before the season begins in early June, to kind of pick and choose which dates might work best for you or your farm team. The last thing on there is just an optional training and education opportunities. We had been talking behind the scenes with some other staff at the food group about ways to continue integrating some of the programming specifically at bigger farms with some of the other departments and other resources and staff and skill sets that exist within the larger nonprofit, within the food group as a whole. So we're still in talks about potentially hosting some sort of a tour at our food bank warehouse in New Hope, just northwest of Minneapolis. There's also some office spaces there and a micro farm that's been used as a community gardening space for a number of years, but there's been talks about trying to incorporate that into some of the educational programming and land access aspects of what we offer at Big River Farms. So stay tuned for some of those optional opportunities as a farmer participating in CSA. I think Becca will probably email you once additional opportunities are available to participate in those things. The one at the bottom there, the Food Group 101 class, was kind of incorporated into the kickoff we did back at the beginning of January, just trying to give some more insight into who the food group is and how the farm is a program and is a partner of this larger nonprofit. Cool. So that's it for sale or for training information, training and education information. Sales and payments is the next category in this program participation agreement. This is a typo in the first one, I have to fix it, but submitting that W-9 form that we've been emailing about the past week just helps us create a vendor profile for you in our accounting software, so that we've got your information and we can be sure to both be able to create purchase orders for you to let you know a week in advance what we'd like to buy from you for CSA. And then also so we can create bills and invoices to make sure that you're getting paid and that we're getting checks to you on time, on a weekly or a monthly basis to pay you for those veggies. So if you haven't done that yet, we've got some time. There's no huge rush, but make sure that you fill out a W-9 form and email it back to us. I think Becca mentioned it in her email earlier this week, but it's important to put the same name on that form as the name that's on the business accounts, like bank account where you'll be depositing your checks for CSA Foods. The reason I say that is because we had some issues in the past where W-9s might have either a personal or farm name, and then the name on farmers' bank accounts didn't match what that was. So like maybe a personal name was on the W-9 and a business name or a farm name was on the bank account. And the banks, a few banks were refusing to deposit those checks because of that discrepancy. So just a heads up that it's important to match those names. Also for our accounting purposes internally, our accountants won't cut a paycheck to give you money for CSA produce purchases unless your vendor profile in our software matches the name on your W-9. So just something to keep in mind, to think about when you're filling those out. Record and keep track of all produce sales. This is partially for your for your reference, as you're thinking about future seasons, just to have that record for yourself, to know what you grew and what you harvested for CSA. But also because of our organic certification, we need to keep track of anything that's harvested and sold, to have that documentation for our organic certifiers. So make sure you're recording and tracking all of your produce sales. It shouldn't be too difficult for CSA because, like I said, there are those purchase orders, which is like a physical piece of paper or a digital form that will email you, that lists the different produce types and quantities for each that we might want to buy from you on a weekly basis. So that can serve as a good record and kind of archive, for tracking those sales too. The next thing on there is related. It's just talking about keeping track of, oh no, I'm sorry, it's not the next thing on there, but also just keeping track of anything you harvest, in the field, again, for your own records, but for our organic certification records too. And I'll show an example of just what that template looks like. We've got a couple of record keeping forms, that we can print off and give to you or email to you too, that you can use to keep track of anything you harvest and any sales you have. Only turn in harvest produce listed on those purchase orders. That's important, because of the funding and because of the way that the CSA boxes are built. So that's just to say, like, make sure that we've got ongoing communication, open dialogue between everybody to make sure that you know what we're purchasing from you, and you don't accidentally spend a bunch of time harvesting something that we're not able to pay you for. So really pay attention to what's on those purchase orders, and if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us by phone or email, or come find us if we're at the farm together. And double check what's on them too. The reason that's in there is just kind of as a backup, because in years past, there have been a few times when purchase orders have got mixed up in the mailboxes and the farm office entry, and somebody might not look closely at the purchase order and harvest items that are meant to be purchased from a different farmer, or there's been confusion about quantity numbers on the purchase orders. So just be sure to double check those purchase orders and make sure that your name is on it, and that there's quantities and units listed for every item. And again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out and talk to me about what's listed on those throughout the season. There definitely is some flexibility, so nothing is super set in stone. I know I've mentioned this during some of our one-on-one farmer goal setting conversations with me and Becca and Emilio and you all. So we definitely prioritize the contracts for CSA on a weekly basis when May and I do those field walks. And we'll bring a printed out copy of those contracts with us each week as we're walking through the field and talking with you if you're there, and kind of documenting what's available for the following week's harvests. But on any given week, there's only probably a maximum of 50% available, ready for harvest from what's on the contracts that we're creating now during the winter. So that being said, we always kind of prioritize those because they are on contract, and we've kind of created this mutual agreement that that's what you're growing and that's what we'll purchase when it's ready. But because of the variabilities of farming, pests, weather damage, things just not being ready to harvest when you think they might be, there's definitely some flexibility built in. So part of that weekly field walk that we do and the harvest estimates are trying to gauge what might be available in the field, that you have extra that you might not be selling to another market, like a farmer's market, or if you have your own independent CSA accounts and memberships that you're selling to, or some wholesale accounts, or the food shelf program. And there's nowhere that you're selling other produce. We might ask, oh, hey, we saw you've got 100 heads of lettuce in the field. It's not on contract for CSA, but would you be willing to sell it to us next week for CSA? So, again, anywhere from 25 to 50% of what we put in CSA boxes each week comes from that process, that field walk process, that follow-up conversation with you. and just talking through what's available and what you might be willing to sell. So I just wanted to mention that there's definitely some room for flexibility too, even though there are contracts that we're prioritizing throughout the season. And that being said, the flexibility piece and the variability of pests and weather and unexpected growing conditions. If you receive a purchase order from me for CSA and you notice there's a produce item on there that might not be ready the following week because of one of those variables, or just because it's not ready to harvest yet, let me know, and we can just talk through a different veggie that might be able to be replaced. If you have other stuff in the fields that you don't have a market for, we might be able to swap something out and make sure that you're still getting purchases for CSA that week. Alternatively, if you don't have anything that can replace those items, we might work with another farmer to try and substitute in another veggie item, just to make sure we've got the, that we're hitting the kind of minimum number of produce items in a box that we're trying to hit. So to give you a sense of what that looks like, we have 2 vegetable share sizes for our CSA. The half share is smaller, and we're trying to get an average of, I'm gonna have to look it up, but I think it's an average of 8 items per week, 8 different vegetables or produce items, herbs, veggies, fruit in that box per week. And then the full share, which is bigger, is 10 to 14 items per week that we're trying to hit, just to give you a sense of what those look like. So again, just a part of that too is making sure that when you turn in your invoice, we need an invoice with every harvest that's turned in. So you can come either find us in the farm office, or if we're out in the fields, come find one of us. Typically, I would say come find me or Jess. Jess is kind of the main point person who does a lot of our invoicing and works with our accountant to make sure that you get paid for what we want to purchase from you. But you can definitely give it to me too. But if you can't find either of us there, or if you're turning in harvests when we're not there, if you're there like later at night when we've gone home for the day, we're gonna put a drop box right in the pack shed, which we haven't had in years past. And it'll be secure like the comment box that we have in the front entry of the farm office, so that you can just drop your paper invoice in there, and it'll be secure. And we'll make sure that it's not going lost, or that somebody else isn't mistakenly taking it. And part of the reason for that is because it's an educational opportunity, and it's just kind of a best practice to turn in a paper invoice that shows what's being purchased and like what the quantity and the prices are, with any future like external buyers that you might be selling produce to in the future as you're growing your farm business. So we want to make sure that we're kind of starting off the bat doing that with CSA and with the food shelf purchasing program this season. So keep that in mind. And going back to the payment piece that I mentioned before, it's important to make sure what's listed on your invoice matches up with what the purchase order lists, because that's another thing that the accountant looks at when she's cutting those checks. So if there is a change in any produce from your purchase order, make sure that you're updating that on the invoice. So like if you have less quantity of a specific crop because of pests or weather issues, or it's not ready to harvest yet, or if you just don't have an entire veggie item that's listed, make sure you're writing that update on the invoice that you fill out. If you're not sure how to fill out an invoice, or if you have questions, feel free to follow up with me after this. I will say too, that class that I'm hosting, I think it's on, it's coming up in March, in like a week or two. It's called How to Sell to Big River Farms. We'll go through like step by step what an invoice looks like and how to fill one out, how to match it to a purchase order during that class. That's on Thursday, March 10th. So if you're able to come to that class or watch that recording, there'll definitely be more info about that at that class. And finally, I mentioned this already, but make sure you're turning in that invoice either on like a physical paper copy, or you can email us one too. when you turn in the produce to the cooler, after you harvest and clean and process things and turn it into the cooler, just make sure you're giving us an invoice that matches that purchase order or is updated based on what you were able to harvest and turn in. All right, next category on here is program management. So these are things that you as a farmer are agreeing to for participating in the CSA program and having contracts. The first one on there is pretty self-explanatory, just reviewing the drafted contracts that are created. And again, you can do that over email or phone, or we can do a video call as we continue to be more isolated this winter and spring, but hopefully we can get back in person soon too and collaborate that way. But in the meantime, feel free to reach out whichever way is the easiest for you or whatever way you prefer. You can ignore the date on here because, like I said, this document was created months ago, like last October or November. So there's definitely some flexibility there, especially if you're in your first year at Big River Farms. I'm just now starting to do some outreach and create those contracts. So we've definitely got some time to work through those. But I know there's some time considerations with seed starting happening soon and the greenhouse is opening up. So let's just keep talking through those. If you're a returning farmer, you should have already received those contracts. And let me know, ideally by the end of the month, if you have any updates or changes you want to see. I know I've already started talking to a few folks over phone and email, so we'll just continue having those conversations. And hopefully by middle of March, end of March, we can wrap up the contract process so that everyone can kind of hit the ground running with seed starting and getting things growing. This has been around for the past few years, and we're continuing this process for program management of CSA inventory, recording your weekly CSA harvest on a big whiteboard that's in the pack shed cooler. So after you harvest and wash and turn in those harvest totes of produce to the cooler for CSA, make sure you're also writing it down in dry erase on those big whiteboards that are in the pack shed cooler. So as you're facing the main cooler space, that's right behind that on the wall. And we'll put your name on there and the date and CSA, so you can just kind of fill in what you've got. And the reason for that is to help, like I said, just with inventory, just tracking what's been harvested and turned in, because that really helps us on Wednesday mornings when we're packing boxes in real time. If we discover that we're missing a produce item or we're short, 50 heads of something or a few bunches of something, we can kind of reference that whiteboard, that inventory list, to make sure that everything was turned in and see if anything was missing, make follow-up phone calls with you to kind of troubleshoot in real time and figure out, if there's something else that we can substitute. So make sure you're doing that for CSA harvests. We'll talk through the labeling more at that March 10th, how to sell to Big River Farms class I mentioned. But we have a labeling system for any veggies that are purchased and turned in for the CSA program and the new food shelf purchasing program, the local food for every table program. And basically what it looks like is just different colors of duct tape. So like in years past, we've had blue, orange, whites, duct tape that you can use, and put that physically on the harvest tote full of your vegetables after you harvest and clean them, and write down the type of produce, the quantity that you've harvested and put into that tote, your name, the date, and then what market it's for. So either CSA or the local food for every table food shelf program. But again, I'll go through that in more detail on March 10th. One thing on there that's new this year is, you all know that we're not customizing our CSA shares this year. We're going back to kind of the traditional model of everything in both share sizes being the same as far as produce type and quantity, because of the feedback we heard from farmers who participated in past seasons when we customize. It created a lot of additional logistics and management and kind of headaches behind the scenes and additional customer service. And we decided that it didn't make sense for our focus, which is really, providing the market, but also providing hands-on education and trying to teach you all as farmers how to do this, so that if you want to start your own independent CSA in the future, you have that knowledge. and are empowered to do it on your own too. So we really want to focus more on that kind of, like I said, behind the scenes, like program management and logistics side of things from an education perspective this season. So all that being said, make sure when you're labeling your CSA totes that you're also writing down the share size on there, and that'll be on your purchase order this season. So keep an eye out on the purchase orders. It'll say the type of produce, the quantity that we want to buy from you, and then if it's for full or half size shares. And the reason we're doing that is to try and just simplify the like setup process on Wednesday mornings when we're doing our packing, so we can have all the harvest totes for the full share sizes on one end of the line, and then all the half share on the other end. So it'll be easy to just kind of identify quickly when volunteers are looking at those boxes, which item is going into which share size. We talked about this a little bit, but the fourth thing here under program management is just communication. You know, let us know, let me know, let Jess know if any produce on your weekly purchase order is not available to harvest. Ideally by noon on Tuesday, so that if we need to find replacement items, we can identify those and talk to you or other farmers and order those before we pack things up at 6:30 in the morning on Wednesdays. To give you a sense of like what the full weekly process looks like, I mentioned May and I do the field walks on Tuesdays, come up with a list of what you're growing, who all is growing what, and what's available for CSA. Wednesday mornings, Jess will follow up and call each of you and kind of go through what we identified in the field and make sure that you're willing to sell it to us for CSA. Again, prioritizing what's on contract. And then I email all of our CSA members with what we've got available for the following week. And on Thursday, I'll create those purchase orders and give them to you so that you have them in advance. The idea being that you kind of know a few days ahead of time what we'd like to buy from you and what's been identified. So that if you have other markets like farmers markets coming up on the weekend or other independent markets like your own CSA, you have a sense of maybe what to save or what's a plan to harvest the following week. So by each Thursday or Friday, you should receive a purchase order from me for the following week. And then farmers would typically harvest on Monday or Tuesday at the latest for us to be able to pack things on Wednesday mornings. So that's kind of the week-long process of how things are identified and ordered and harvested and packed up for CSA. The next category on here is infrastructure. So this is basically just listing what resources and equipment is available for CSA for your use at Big River Farms. You might be familiar with this, especially if you're a returning farmer, you're probably familiar with this, but maybe not so much if you're in your first year in the program. But we provide a pack shed. So we have cleaning facilities to clean anything you harvest. We have a few coolers for storing crops after they're harvested. We also have reusable plastic harvest totes and separate reusable plastic CSA totes with like flaps that close to have a lid on the top for transportation for doing the deliveries to our 14 drop sites. So those are available for your use. We recruit between 7 and 9 volunteers who agree to work shares for our CSA. So basically they volunteer for the whole 18-week season, come every Wednesday morning from that 6 to 8:30 timeframe and help us pack 200 boxes of vegetables because we couldn't do it by ourselves as staff. So it's great to have that help. And then in exchange, we offer them a free half share for their time and the labor that they're helping out. So you'll get to meet them as they're helping us pack throughout the season. So they're kind of considered part of the like shared resources that are available to assist with our CSA program. And then the last thing on there is delivery. You will not have to do any of the deliveries for our CSA if we buy produce from you on those contracts, or if it's not on contract, if we buy CSA food from you, you don't have to do deliveries by yourself. So that's part of the infrastructure and the support and the resources that we provide as Big River Farms. The number on there needs to be updated, but we have a total of 14 drop sites that we bring our CSA shares to every week and that members can choose to pick up from, including the farm and our food bank warehouse and offices in New Hope that I mentioned earlier. And then there's a bunch of other ones throughout the cities. Individual homes of people who have been members in the past and have volunteered, and a few businesses and churches. So we've got a couple breweries, a bookstore, birth clinic in St. Paul, a bunch of different spots throughout the cities. So we'll do all those deliveries. We've got a delivery truck and we're going to hire a delivery driver on contract just to do CSA deliveries this season. So you definitely have access to all of those shared resources as part of somebody participating in the CSA program. Other shared resources. So this is getting more into managing some of those shared resources that I just mentioned. We'll assign a number of shared reusable harvest totes and CSA totes to you. We're kind of working through what that looks like, particularly because of the second bullet point under shared resources, which is as a farmer participating in CSA, agreeing to weekly cleaning and sanitizing of not only the harvest totes, which has happened in years past, but also the CSA totes, which was a staff job before, that is shifting as part of the CSA program this year. So we're still working out what that might look like, but just keep in mind that that's a new ask this season, is participating in the collective cleaning and sanitizing of both the harvest totes and the CSA totes. And that's really from a food safety perspective. That's part of our food safety plan, to make sure that, you know, food isn't getting contaminated or potentially making people sick. So I think we'll probably end up creating some sort of a shared schedule, kind of like we do with pack shed cleaning and harvest tote cleaning for the CSA totes, but we're kind of talking through what that'll look like still on the staff end. So stay tuned for more information. And if you have insights or feedback or ideas for how that should look, like reach out to me or Jess or Becca, any of the farm staff, and we can keep talking through what makes the most sense for how that's going to look this year. I just mentioned this, but sharing cooler space and pack shed space, we also need to clean and sanitize those. Again, from a food safety standpoint, just to make sure that everything's staying clean and we're not having any potential contamination of food that's being harvested and sent out to various markets. So we have a schedule that will assign you to a few days throughout the season to be in charge of doing some weekly tasks for helping us clean and sanitize the pack shed space. And the last thing on there under shared resources is, oh, this is just kind of playing into what I just mentioned, but just making sure that you're keeping the pack shed kind of clean after you use it for any market, but then also taking part in those weekly pack shed cleaning schedules. I see we got something in the chat box. Kristen asked if you can use the harvest totes just for CSA. No, you can still use them for any market.
Yeah, but our new contract says that we can't use we have to have our own harvest totes though this year.
In the farmer education program contract?
Yep, our lease agreement.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, I'll follow up with Kajua and some of the other staff on that, so that we make sure we're telling you the right thing. But we do still have all those harvest totes, those reusable harvest totes. It might be that the update in the education program agreement was that maybe they're only available to first-year farmers, and the hope is that as you progress throughout the years that you're buying more of your own tools and equipment. But let me follow up with Kajua and ask her what route she wants to go with that. She and I were talking yesterday about a question. This is a total tangent, but she and I were talking about the new food shelf purchasing program. And a question that Danielle raised during the info session the other week was, if we're asking you as farmers to turn in those food shelf harvests in the plastic reusable totes that we have, or if we want to ask you to turn those in reusable wax cardboard boxes. We're definitely leaning towards not using the boxes, the wax cardboard boxes. One, because we want to use less unreusable materials as possible. And we also just got a grant specifically working towards that goal. Two, because we don't want you to, as a farmer, to have to eat the cost of paying for those boxes. And three, because it's all being repacked in New Hope once it's delivered there before it goes out to the food shelves. So it shouldn't matter what type of box they're delivered in. And we have grant money to buy some additional reusable harvest totes. So anyways, that's all a long way of saying I'm hopeful that you all can still use those totes regardless of how many years you've been in the program. So stay tuned. I'll follow up with people and give you an update on that. One other thing I'll say is Kaju and I talked about like similar to our label program for labeling things for CSA versus food shelf versus farmers market when you're turning produce into the coolers, using a similar color coded system for the reusable harvest totes. So maybe green harvest totes are used primarily for turning in CSA produce, and gray harvest totes are primarily used for food shelf produce that's turned in. Just to try and visually differentiate it in the cooler for like when our delivery drivers come to make pickups for food shelf, and also to help you as farmers identify what's dirty from what market as we talk about collective management and cleaning and sanitizing of all those totes. So again, stay tuned. We're talking through what some of that's going to look like from a logistics and management standpoint, but we'll follow up in some staff meetings coming up and let you know what that looks like. Good question. Thanks, Christian. Okay, we're almost through this. I want to leave some time here so we can open it up to more questions. But the last things on here are, again, just noticing that contracts aren't guaranteed. They'll be prioritized as much as possible. There's variabilities like we talked about. They'll be prioritized when we do our field walks and our purchase orders. There are opportunities to sell non-contracted produce, like I mentioned. So that flexibility is definitely available. And the final thing on here is that, like I mentioned, first-year farmers are eligible to receive CSA contracts for the first time. So we're happy that that's a direction we're moving in to make it more inclusive and accessible. Yeah, that's basically it. The rest of it is just name, sign-in, and dating. Okay, I've been talking for a long time, so I'm going to open it up to questions. If anybody would like to ask questions about any of that dense information we just went through. If not, well, we can definitely keep it open if you have any questions, or feel free to put them in the chat box too. But I also wanted to share quickly, because I know we're running short on time, a few documents. One second here, I just got to open them up. Oh, where did they go? If you're a returning farmer, you're probably familiar with these, but I wanted to make sure to share these with first-year farmers too. This is an example of a harvest tote cleaning log. So it's fairly straightforward. It's just a way to record the date, your name, and the number of totes you've used or cleaned on a weekly basis. Last year, we designated a certain number of different colored totes to farmers based on how many were available and how many farmers we had. So we'll probably do something similar this year. We are adding more mailboxes to the farm office entry and to the pack shed cooler since we have so many more farmers joining us at Big River this year. So keep an eye out for that. And we'll designate mailboxes in both places at the farm office and in the pack shed cooler for you again. For anyone who's new, we create folders with some of these logs and we'll put them in your kind of mailbox cubby space in the pack shed cooler. So it'll have a harvest tote cleaning log. It will have harvest record log to just note anything that you harvest out of the field for any market. And I think it'll probably have a pack shed cleaning log in it too, just to record and check off all those items on the weekly cleaning schedule. So I wanted to share that. And if you got to hop off, feel free, but thanks everybody for coming. I wanted to share just a couple more real quick documents. Here's an example of what the pack shed cleaning schedule looks like. So again, this is something we'll create, but it just shows like each month. And depending on how many farmers we have, you might only have like 1 or 2 times throughout the whole summer and fall season that you're signed up to clean the pack shed. But typically you have a week to do it. The names on here are listed on Wednesdays, but you basically have from, you know, that Wednesday through the following Tuesday to clean the pack shed, based on, you know, what your availability is. So there's definitely some flexibility there too, to do those weekly tasks. So that's just an example of what this looks like, and we'll post it in the cooler in the pack shed space, and share it over email probably too, so that everybody has a copy. So that is that. And then the final thing I wanted to share, if I can find it. Oh, let's see. Give me 1 second. Oh, the food safety log. That was the final thing I wanted to share. Okay, so here is the food safety log. Again, this is just a way to record keep and have some accountability to make sure that everything's staying clean in the pack shed. So this will probably be in the folder that I mentioned with all the records in your pack shed mailbox. But it basically just lays out all of those kind of weekly cleaning tasks, to make sure that we're, you know, collectively managing and maintaining and cleaning the shared resources we have. So a way to just kind of check off an initial, once you complete one of those tasks. So cleaning different materials, different resources out there, emptying the garbage and recycling, helping us with the hand washing stations, that kind of thing. We'll go over this more in detail too at some of the upcoming like farm safety trainings and food safety trainings that Pierce and I are leading, but I just wanted to share that with you as well. One final thing. If I can find it. Looks like I don't have it on here. I was going to share a copy of the monthly pack shed cleaning too, but we can definitely go over that in upcoming classes too. But yeah, we've got a few minutes left if anybody has final questions. Otherwise, again, feel free to reach out to me after this if you want to talk through anything. Oh, it looks like we've got a couple questions in the chat. Ku asked if there was anything he used to be concerned about. Oh, looks like Ku jumped off. No, Ku, there is nothing because you are not a part of the CSA, but thank you for coming. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah. Looking forward to
All right.
CSA kicking off.
See you guys in a week and a half. So, oh, I do have a question. So,
Yeah, go for
are
it.
we for sure, like, are the greenhouses for sure open by the 3rd for us to come in to start, you know, putting stuff in order then?
Yeah, that is the plan. The 1st, March 1st, next Tuesday.
Oh, March 1st. Okay.
And I think, yeah, I'm
And
so
we're
looking
still
forward to
bringing our
greenhouse
own
season.
jug for water, right? If the snow hasn't melted.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't heard about that. I bet May or Pierce probably knows though. Pierce, are you still on the line? Could you?
Yeah, I'm
chip in?
still here. Assuming weather allows, we'll get the hoses connected to the greenhouse so you can, just water normally with the hoses inside the greenhouse. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on the weather, and yeah, if it's warm enough, we'll have the hoses set up. If not, then we'll have to figure something else out. I'm sure we'll kind of keep you updated as the week progresses.
Okay, 'cause at the rate that this weather's going.
Yeah, we'll see.
It looks like we're supposed to warm up a little bit above freezing next week, so fingers crossed. I was going to say if you ordered compost or potting soil through Cosmo, I think that's getting delivered next Monday to the 28th. Is that right, Pierce?
Mhm.
Yep, that's correct. Should be coming like late morning, early afternoon is the plan. So
Awesome.
mhm.
Spring is coming.
Oh, one
Mhm.
other question. How much are the chicken feed, a pallet of it?
You talking about the chicken fertilizer?
Chicken fertilizer, not chicken feed.
May,
I don't
I
have
think,
chickens.
yeah, I don't remember exactly, but May did some research this last week and she told me a price, but I don't remember it right now. But I know May knows.
Okay,
Sorry.
it's okay.
And I know Casual was saying too that the prices of things have gone up just with inflation and prices across the board being crazy now for everything, groceries and gas and everything being up. So just a heads up that some of those prices might be different than what you were expecting from last year.
Are we gonna be in the same greenhouse as we were last year, or how are you guys dividing it this year?
That would be another May question. She was in charge of assigning folks tables. So I do not know exactly. I don't even know where I am, to be honest. I haven't gone over there to check. So
Thanks.
Stay
All
tuned.
So
Yeah,
did
go ahead, Vin.
just listening to the whole thing about the Cosmo soil. So was a bulk order placed,
Yeah, I believe so. Do you know,
or
Pierce?
did people just individually order? Pardon?
So yeah, there's a larger order is placed with Cosmo. So basically, individual farmers have been calling Cosmo and just telling them that they're part of Big River Farms. And then John, he's the owner of Cosmo. Basically, he's been coordinating, all the orders that have been coming in. And then I think just this week he's been calling those individual farmers and getting their credit card numbers to pay for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So is it okay? Like, can I just call their office and do it, or or do you have John's number that I can?
Yeah, John, so if you just go on the Cosmo website, his phone number is right on there. I would say, yeah. So if you're trying to be a part of that order, I would probably give him a call like first thing tomorrow morning. Because I know they are kind of getting ready to start loading the truck and whatnot. So
Sure, I'll do that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm trying to put the first number that I put in the chat, that's his cell phone number. And then the business phone number is the second one that I'm putting on in the chat here, Vanda. So if you want to call him, you can. So that way,
Sure.
if he's not in the office, you can get him at his cell phone.
Sounds good. I'll do that. Thanks a ton.
And that's for John. All right.
You're on mute, Matt.
You're muted, Matt.
My bad. I was going to say, I said, are we all good? I wanted to make sure you got those phone numbers before I ended the meeting.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Good seeing
everyone.
you.
Yeah.
Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.